Hey, Nerdpreneurs. This episode is part 2 of a discussion Chris and I had about the importance of communication skills and how people like you can hone them. If you missed part 1, I'd go back and listen to that one first. But without further delay, here's part 2 on communication skills.
Talking nerdy. We're just talking nerdy. With all this talking nerdy. Oh, come on, you wanna talk nerdy.
First principle of 12 rules for life is stand up straight with your shoulders back. If you don't feel confident, you will start to feel confident by changing your physiology. Tony Robbins teaches that at his conferences, is basically riles people up into feeling confident that they can do anything by making them move and move their physiology in such a way that powerful, confident people would. And it's amazing the impact that has.
Yeah, mobility, super.
Sometimes I will freestyle rap songs that I know that I've written because it makes me feel more confident before I go do other things.
Oh, is that why? I have noticed like a couple times you kind of do it under your breath when I've noticed it. But there's times that we've been out at events and we're not like around people or anything. And I might notice you do that. And I'm kind of like, that's part of his ritual, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think that when you can do something nobody else can do, it does give you confidence. I was at a mastermind one time, and there's this lady who trains dogs and is one of the most powerful dog agility trainers in the world, like world champion level person. And when they were talking about how do you maintain being in a room with really powerful people when they've, say, built businesses 10 times the size or had impacts that are 10 times the size than that you are. And it wasn't talking definitely about her, but she perked up in that moment out of this room and said, they can't train dogs. And it was just like this really simple, like, principle of like, hey, I don't care what they could do. They can't do what I freaking do. Just like that attitude of, and so now when because I worked very hard to be able to functionally do any freestyle rap and to write rap music. It's not an easy skill and it did not come easily for me. And I don't even want to pretend that I'm like at the level of somebody who is doing it professionally. But when I do that for me, I feel more confident about who I am because it's like, I know this person. I don't care how much money they've made. I don't care how much they've done. They cannot do what I'm doing right now because I know they haven't spent 2, 3, 4 years in their room doing it. Like, it's just confidence in that way because you've built some skill that other people don't have.
This is touching on, because you're reminding me, man, I'm loaded with stories today. You're reminding me of when I was younger, one of the first acting camps I ever did. And so you're like, you're like 10. So they're not really going to teach you how to do Shakespearean necessarily. But they essentially, the exercise was, hey, what's a language? Like not literally a language, but what is verbiage? What are terms? What is a subject matter that you know so well that you could speak in terms that many other people don't understand what you're saying when you say it? And at the time for me, it was piano playing. Like, I listed off some terms like arpeggios and, an F minor to an A diminished and stuff. And she said, all of you have something special that makes you powerful. You have knowledge that makes you strong. And she was going in that vein. And I remember in that moment, like as a kid, that was a foundational moment for me, a core memory, if you will. And it taught me that we all have something unique. Like you're saying, it is that there is that confidence that we get from that thing that we do really fucking well. We all have something we do fucking well. And that kind of ties back to earlier when I was like, asking a person, what do you like to do? What do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, that's why it's important to be developing a skill in something that you are proud of. And it can be anything. It could be, music, sure, art. It could be professional video gaming, like high level. Some people could use that.
Right.
I can talk to girls. I can, or men, like, I don't know, whatever. You could say, I can make beats, or I'm an incredible decorator. I'm an incredible cleaner. Like, there are all sorts of things you can be game-changingly good at that don't necessarily have to do with your business. But because you're good at them, you can draw on those things to feel confident in the moment. Because I guarantee people you're sitting across from or, talking with or trying to sell, there's a lot of them that can't do things that you can do. And there's a way to draw that confidence up into yourself from doing hard things that you've built skill in.
Yeah, we're talking about, it's funny. I don't know if you've noticed this, man, but we've talked about how to be a good listener and the kind of things to ask or that you could ask. And we've also talked about how to be confident when you're speaking and or how you can feel comfortable speaking and how confidence ties into that. And I think we've actually been talking about each person in each position in the conversation, whether you're the listener and you're asking the questions or you're the person talking, and how do you feel comfortable talking. And that's interesting to me. We've kind of covered both sides of the interaction of the conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, if you planned that, nice work. I just caught on. But otherwise,
No, I don't plan.
That's true. You don't. I'm the planner. I'm the structure guy.
I think things emerge out of things just emerge that way.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about one more. I want to talk about a couple more things maybe, but one of the things I wanted to talk about was a principle that really helped one of my old sales managers at a time when he really needed it. We had this program where people could run a summertime office. They would go out, find a lease for an office for 4 months, recruit a bunch of students, create a summertime team. And then these are usually students who are running the office, and they'd go back to school at the end, having made a bunch of money and created an amazing experience, right? That's the idea. But it is not easy. You're working long hours, long days, and you're convincing people to sell knives. So already it's a pretty big uphill battle. There was a manager that I trained, and he went out to run his branch office. His name was Spencer. And when he went out, his first month, May, which is a big month in Canada for recruiting students. Okay. I know you guys get out sometime in June, but May is when everyone gets out in Canada. So this is what we call the gold. It's the area where every student's looking for a summer job, and you got to try and capture as many of them onto your team as possible. And Spencer went through that month, and he had a rough training group where not a lot of people showed up. They didn't really sell much. They weren't really good. And then he did the same thing. He ran 4 training groups. And I think at the end of that month, he was the last place branch office in all of Canada. Like, he had sold the very least and had the worst start out of everybody. So he went to a conference, and at that conference, we had a bunch of speakers. And one of the speakers talked about the difference between being a thermometer and being a thermostat. And so I've talked about this before on other people's podcasts, but I haven't really talked about it here on our podcast. And so I thought I'd mention that, because the difference between being a thermometer versus a thermostat. What is the difference, Frank? You know the difference, right?
Yeah. Thermometer tells the temperature in the room. Thermostat sets the temperature in the room.
Yeah. And so you want to be the thermostat, because in communication, I think a good way to look at it is be the thermostat. Because like you at this dinner party, when you go into a conference, when you walk into a sales conversation, you don't want to just take the temperature of the room. You want to be the temperature of the room. So you are an impact player. You change things when you get in there. You bring your energy, and that could be through your enthusiasm, through your confidence, through your ability to make people laugh and do something unexpected, break them from their regular pattern. So now they're living on your vibe. Musicians do this, right? That's what their job is to change your state, to be the thermostats in the room. Same with great art. Great art changes the temperature in the room. A great podcast, throw that on, you change the temperature of the room, and you're a thermostat. So Spencer learned this lesson at this conference. And I'll tell you, he went from being the last place to being the number 3 branch in all of Canada within 2 months. And I asked him after the end of the first month after that, I was like, what was the big difference? He's like, you know what? I heard that thermostat thing that people were talking about. And then when I realized I was the one who had the influence over what was happening. and I could make a difference with those people. So instead of letting them guide me with their energy, I started guiding them with my energy. And my energy was actually so powerful as to bring an office from last place to third place.
Yeah, I've heard that before, and I love the concept. I do struggle sometimes with it. Okay, so the times that it makes sense to me is like you said, like at a dinner party. I can gauge, I can set the temperature, so to speak. But there's times when, and I'm curious what you think, and maybe, well, yeah, I'm curious what you think on this. I work with people who have strong personalities, and uh, typically salespeople, those salespeople and their personalities. And they are very fixated on their way of doing things. And that's part of what makes them a great salesperson is that they can convince you. And if you're on the fence, they will tell you all the reasons that why what they think is the right way to do it. Even if they actually don't really know what the fuck they're talking about, they will just say, this is the way it should be done. This is the right way. And you're like, I'm not going to turn this into an argument, and I feel like these kinds of people are in every workplace, whether they're in sales or not,
Even on podcasts.
even on podcasts. But it's hard to set the temperature when there's somebody else who is so fixated on the temperature being their temperature.
Yeah.
How do you handle? Do you just say, fuck this room. I'm going to be the thermostat in a different room.
It's not always about battling with them, because I think it can be that way. The reason why those people are being the thermostat is they are aligned to some form of value or principle that they have deemed an immovable object. And so it's very challenging to move that person because they are aligned to a value, not aligned to an outcome. And what I'm thinking you're experiencing in that situation is your desire to be attached to an outcome versus a value. And so one of the most powerful things I've learned in communication is to always be committed to your values and not outcomes. So if I'm talking to someone and they tell me, I don't need this thing that you're selling me, or I don't want to do it this way, and I keep pushing the same thing. No, we got to do it this way, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way. That's going to be much harder because you're communicating to that person that you're committed to an outcome versus a value. And values are things like truth or service or win-win or customer needs or honesty, long-term benefit. Those are values to be aligned to, right? And so instead of being committed to like, I want to do it this way or this outcome, be committed to providing like, hey, I want this to be a win-win experience for everyone involved. So here's what I would say would be a win for me on this situation. And would this be a win for you if we do it this way? So it's often about alignment and being aligned to a value and not an outcome. So it's not a battle. It's about a principle. Like, I'm committed to having the best customer experience for our people. So since we're all aligned to that, here's my concern around it. And aligning to a value that is outside of yourself that all of you agree is important is actually way easier to then be this thermostat for that room, moving it in that direction. I'm committed to sharing my goals and looking for opportunities everywhere. So that's why I'm so focused and working so hard right now to achieve my goals, And I think, and that's why I would love it if you told 10 to 15 people about our podcast, because we're trying to build something bigger than that. And we're really committed to our goals. Like, just those types of things can allow you to be the thermostat a little bit more instead of having to, it's not an outcome that you're committed to. It's a value that everyone's committed to.
Well, that's an interesting point because, yeah, I'll admit there are some times where I get fixated on, hey, this should be this way. Someone says no, or they say, that's a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other day, someone said, why worry about that? Why put the time into it? And in my mind, it's because I have a standard,
Mm-hmm.
and I want my work to look good, not just because it's mine, and I have my name attached to it. In fact, I usually don't have my name attached to anything. It's more so I want to grow. I want to provide the customer a great end result that they love so they come back. And in order for me to feel like I've accomplished that, I have to put in the work and the time. And when someone tells me, no, that's silly, that doesn't make sense. Sure, I will ask myself, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the effort worth it? Or is there diminishing returns here? And I usually ask myself that. But when someone says, no, that's essentially telling me that's dumb that you're worrying about that. It's like, what are you saying? But I'm hearing that rather than fixating on having a great product, it's more so, hey, I'm all about providing the customer more than what they want so that they come back. That's why I'm doing this.
Yeah. So, for example, like there's a couple things in there. One is I think that you as a person are committed to providing great work that is a reflection of you because you see your work as a reflection of you.
Less so now than I used to.
100%. I get it. It's less so. But I think that if you wanted to, say, convince people, like, and that's a question you have to ask yourself, like, because when it comes to, say, us and our podcast and what we're doing, like, I think this is an outlet for us to be able to do stuff at a higher level that we really want and do the standards we want it to be. That's partly why we do it. When we're working in another company, and because we all deal with this sometimes, where what we believe is the right way to do it in the standard is different than what other people will consider it. But if you can align why you're thinking about it to a company goal or to a value that they hold dear, you might be able to convince them differently about why this is essential. So it's like, actually, the reasoning I'm thinking about this is I think about the customer experience here. This is an opportunity for us to give them a level 10 experience where they will not only just like it, they might tell their friends about it or other companies. And then that actually will provide us with more business down the road. Or it will also ensure that they'll come back to us, because I know for a fact other places won't do this since it's not easy, but I'm willing to. And that's why I'm bringing it up to you, because I think this could be great for long term and market, setting ourselves apart in the market. For example, like if I had to sell an idea, I might align it to a value that I know they have so that they at least know I'm not doing this because I don't know any better, but because I actually know where we're all trying to go. And I think about it strategically from that standpoint.
Yeah, finding those shared
Yeah.
goals. Like, yeah, you said align, you used that word. And yeah, absolutely. Finding those situations where you align.
And then you also might find out that the person who is telling you not to waste your time on that might say, well, yes, but one of our values right now is blah, 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 blah. And your energy should be put into that, because if you're putting it here right now, then it's not on this. And this is actually what really matters. And this matters from a macro perspective. So sorry, but no. And that at least gives you the respect of like, hey, I appreciate you're thinking about this from your perspective and that level 10 experience. However, this over here is actually what's really important, deadlines or whatever. Like we actually are a service-based company that really needs this done now instead of 2 weeks from now or whatever. And so there might be things on that side of it that they can explain. And then you understand differently what the values are. And I've had those situations before in my company and in my old company. It's just part of being in business is you have to learn where are the values of the people and what is important and prioritized. So
Yeah, man. Figuring out it's been so much of so I just hit the 5-year mark at my company, and which is crazy for me. I haven't worked at one place for 5 years.
that's
And
crazy. I've only ever worked more than 10 years places.
okay. Well,
That's
I've had a lot
crazy.
of different jobs, a lot of different bosses, and I'm sticking at this place because I like my boss, even though
Mm.
I don't always agree. He always does explain, like you just demonstrated, why we should do it his way. And at the end of the day, it's his company. I'm going to do what he says. But even if I don't agree, but there's also so many times where after I go along with what he says, I'm like, fuck, he was right. God damn. And eating that humble pie is so annoying. It's so annoying because it's like, all right, okay. Those those experiences are, I think they, I think they help us grow.
Hmm.
I think they help us become more well-rounded, more open-minded. God, can they feel like punishing or like a punching bag after a while? It's just like, oh my God, I'd love to just have a week where my ideas were the right or the best ideas. Hey, Nerdpreneurs. Soft skills like these are important to growing a business and brand. If you're building one, then you'll want to listen to our interviews with known and successful nerdy entrepreneurs in loads of niches, especially our full-length episodes that have advice for sales, marketing, networking, and more, all of which can be found on Patreon at patreon.com/nerdpreneur. Links are in the show notes.
Here's another principle of communication that I think is maybe a learning opportunity for us right now, is don't take things personally. And so one of the biggest things I have seen and people is when they take things personally, the only person who tends to suffer is you, right? The person who gets offended, right? Or thinks it's about them. And so I like to remind people nobody makes you feel anything. You only make yourself feel things based on the story we tell ourselves about what a person said, did, or what happened. So things like this, where maybe an idea doesn't get taken, or maybe I would just ask, what is the story you're telling yourself about that? Was it because is there things you're saying about that that are making it a story that is not empowering to you? It may not be at all because it wasn't a good idea or that you're not capable of coming with good ideas, right? I think it might be just there are potentially other stories at play here that need to take priority because it's not your company, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. And I hate it, but I have heard so many times in my life, don't take it so personally. It's just so annoying.
Well, let me ask you, what's on the other side of not taking it personally? What's the
It's
opposite of
not
that?
it's not as easy of a switch to just stop doing.
No, no, I know. I'm not, but I just want to ask, what is the opposite for you of not taking it of taking it personally?
The opposite of taking it personally would be probably apathy and
Yeah,
not
see,
caring
and that's not who you are. So I think you might need to change the definition.
of
So, like, of the what's the opposite of taking something personally is not caring and apathy, right? What's the opposite of it, or what could be the opposite of it instead of that, right?
being a machine.
No, that's the same thing as apathy and not caring.
I'll just have AI to help me out with that. You're getting at something, I feel, and I'm not entirely sure without some in-depth reflection here.
Let's just ask ChatGPT right now. What is the opposite of taking something
Too
personally?
too seriously, or personally, yeah, that's good.
Hmm. So there's two things. There's you can either detach yourself emotionally or not care, or you can view it objectively.
Yeah, that's fair, man. That is actually, I have gotten that advice in the past, and I do use it sometimes, but it's
Hmm.
sometimes I just forget.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not trying to turn this into a therapy session or some stuff like that, but I just wanted to reflect that back because I think a lot of people often do have like when we're struggling with something like that, it's usually because of some story we're telling ourselves. And it's like, if, if they don't like the story or they don't like the thing I came up with, I'm offended. And, I have to care because if I don't care, then I am, then I don't care. And then I have apathy. And that's like, and I can't be that person because there's some evil around that too. Whereas it doesn't have to go all that way. It can be just if something doesn't work for me, it could just be, an objective look that wasn't a match, or there's something there where it doesn't have to be personal. It's just this person was looking at it objectively versus, I have apathy. It doesn't mean I don't care about anything. It just means that when I look at it, that some of these things need to be looked at objectively, and I'm glad I care about it, but they maybe don't. So,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, it helps to care a lot when you do a creative
it does.
art form or
It
a
makes it better.
creative work. Yeah, because you're like, at least this is what I tell myself. When I care a lot about, I want to get the right angle, I want to get the right lighting because
Mhm.
I love the feeling when I look at the screen and I go, fuck yeah, I got it.
Mhm.
That is so cool. Even if the client doesn't care nearly as much as I do, it's the satisfaction I get from my work, which is
Mhm.
what makes me like to keep doing it. But yeah, there is an aspect of I could look at that objectively.
Or even just like it's okay if they don't care about it because I care about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they knew that's why they're hiring you is you care. So like it's not a bad thing that you care so much. It's actually a great thing. But then the fact that they don't care shouldn't be surprising is I guess the way I would look at it.
Yeah, it definitely it's great for doing the work by myself, but it isn't great for those
Hmm.
interpersonal dynamics sometimes, which is what we've been talking about.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to give some ideas of where because there are the interpersonal is always where it is, right? Like where one person cares more about something than another person cares about something, and sometimes in our relationships, like my girl, I'm gonna go see. I just bought tickets to see Corn and System of a Down in New York
Ooh.
City.
Oh
It's
shit.
gonna be crazy. And this is the only time I'm going to be able to see those two bands probably ever together. It's going to be incredible. And uh, we're going to go down there. Now, I bought 2 tickets because I know I'm not going to go on my own. I wanted to share an experience with someone. Does she care at all where we sit? Does she care at all about seeing these bands? Not super into System of a Down or Korn. She probably couldn't name one of their songs, at least not Korn. She probably knows a few System sounds.
Sure.
So the point is like, but do I take that personally because she doesn't care, or do I just appreciate that she cares enough about me to go along with me, right? And
Yeah.
so the way I look at it like that, and this is how it works with any sort of dynamic relationships and stuff, is that there's always going to be someone who's caring more about it. And there are things I've been to with her where, it's not my thing, but I know it's her thing. So I care a lot about her. So I jump in and be excited about it and be in it too, because I think that that's where you can bring that care. So like you care about your client. And so that can translate over to caring about the work they want you to create, or you care about the company. So that can translate over to caring about, what the boss wants you to do. And that's where things I know generally win, right? Like that's why you do it. But your care is actually what's giving you all that power, but it's also causing you to have that distress.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind that those two things are great. Like just realize where you're putting your care, matters.
It does. Yeah. I mean, if for people that care about their work, it does create this new sub journey. It's a sub quest on your journey of, okay, I don't want to lose this ability of care because it's a powerful tool on my journey, but I also have to learn how to wrestle with this power. It is like,
Mhm.
I'd say it's like a powerful artifact. It's a powerful tool, relic, but you don't want to lose it. You don't want to just toss it away. And it's also hard because it's part of you. You do have to learn for myself. I have to learn how to wrestle with it at the times that I care, that my care becomes so strong that I just want other people to shut the fuck up. And, my care is brightest. My care is strongest. My care will persevere against all of your other
Yeah.
thoughts and objectives because, and yeah, having to come to terms with, you know what? Yes, that care is great. Let's communicate it. And if other people find that they don't think that care is as important, then I have to be okay with that. And that's been hard.
Well, that's also the entrepreneur journey because literally no one will care about your business as much as you do.
Yes.
And your business suffers if you don't care about it. And in fact, there will be very few people outside of you that will care about you caring so much about it. It's a solo style of journey, isn't it?
It's so true. It's a lonely, yeah, it's but the cool thing is you can find people that care about parallel things that align, which
Yeah.
is nice.
Well, you get to support them in their journey because they probably have something they care about a lot, right? And then
Right.
ideally, if you are you encourage them and have care for what they're going after and their personal goals, right? Whether it be, oh, they're working out a lot, or they have this art thing they're doing, or they play music on the side, or they have, you know, they throw great parties, like they dinner parties, like maybe that's what they care about. And when you show care for that, funny enough, a lot of times people will come around and be willing to have care for you having your goals, even though they don't get it, and they will not care nearly as much as you. But that is that balancing act of care is a big part of, I think, having great communication skills, is understanding that what you care about will not necessarily be what everyone cares about. But if you show care for someone else's care,
Mhm.
that goes a long way to getting them to care about your stuff and what you care about. And you can build a support network around having similar like-minded people who are like also entrepreneurs, right? Like that's what I mean. We're building a community here of nerdy entrepreneurs that can connect with each other, help each other. And part of the reason, even though they're all different niches, markets, that sort of thing, is that they can look at those other people and feel supported, or feel that person's like me. They care a lot about this thing. And so I'm not alone because I care a lot about this thing that I'm doing. And I think that it makes it so much easier to keep on that journey of nerdpreneurship or entrepreneurship if you have a support network around you that understands that and cares as much as you do.
Yeah, I'd even go as far as to specify that it's a respect and encouragement when you have like the back and forth, when you can have that with other people, whether it's a fellow nerdpreneur or a boss or even a partner. Like when you get that encouragement, when they like the care, when they express care for what you care about, that is respectful, they're not putting it down, it's encouraging, they want you to go get that thing that you care about and use that care to accomplish your goals. That is when you feel nurtured, and that's when you want to give it back to them, I find, because I think we all have been in either relationships or employed, or collaborated with people who only cared about their thing and they didn't care about caring for
Mhm.
yours, and it feels one-sided.
Yeah. Well, it's we learned something in objection handling, that how to not take things personally. It's very easy to write a story about someone who says, oh, I would never spend this kind of money on whatever it is you're selling, right? Especially if you're a high priced product that has a lot of quality to it. And how easy is it when we're having an objection thrown at us to take it personally and then write a story of, it's like, this person is dumb. I hate them for being so self righteous in their beliefs. They don't know anything. Um, or could you say, hey, they just don't get it yet? Maybe if I'm patient and explain things better, they might actually get it and it'll resonate with them. So, understanding and patience on the side when people don't have the care that we do, or don't have the perspective we do, is something that really helps in communication. That patience around when someone disagrees or doesn't see what you see. Understand they aren't you. They don't have your perspective. I used to say this all the time. If people knew what you knew, they'd be buying, right? Like
Right.
if they went through 3 days of training, or if they had all these other things that they understood about it, like if they have seen all the testimonials from all the people who went through this program and got all the great results that because you've been doing your job for 5 years now, you said, right? So you have all these stories and you've seen the growth, you've seen successful clients, you've seen the impact it's made, all these things. This is like, day 2 of meeting you, for example, right? They're like,
Uh-huh.
they don't get it yet, right? So that's where we have to have that grace and that patience sometimes to build that relationship. And I think so many people with the attention span economy we were talking about earlier are very demanding of people understanding their beliefs instantly, and their perspective instantly, even though that is never been expected, and it's really unrealistic when you think about it.
But it's also the need. It's also they have to have the need for your thing that you're offering. It's not just that if they understood all the cool features and testimonials, they also have to already have a problem that this is solving.
Or they have to be made aware of a problem that is
Yeah.
not necessary, that
Not
needs
at
to
the
be solved.
forefront. Yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of people are like, depending on, like, if you're selling human resources solutions to a corporation, they may think, well, what does this have to do with, we get new people, we hire people all the time, we're doing fine. We hired 3 people last week. We don't really need a revamp of our human resources. But when you dig in with it, they didn't have an onboarding process, so it took
Yeah.
extra long
Oh,
to train that
actually, it did
person.
take us a while to get everyone up to speed. You know what?
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
that you point that out.
Yeah, when you last time, and you actually are losing people to this other company that has a better work culture, and you don't have institutional raises, or you don't have all these other things that can actually aspire people to advancement and want to work harder. So there's lost productivity. So there are things that business owners might, and let's also not forget that along with that, if you have your time will be freed up because you won't be putting out headaches with personnel problems, which I imagine is probably taking up way too much of your time. Wouldn't you agree that dealing with personnel issues is probably taking too much of your time and you should be focused on big picture stuff? And all of a sudden they're like, and I bring this up as an example because it's an example, but you could apply that any type of business anywhere where it's not like, well, we want to invest in marketing and sales because we know the return on marketing and sales is going to make a lot of money. And it's like, well, yeah, but there are other things in your business that if you solve them will wind up being more efficient as well. And sometimes those problems aren't obvious because they're not the biggest problem, but they're a problem. And so part of a salesperson's job or a business job, person's job, is to find the problem and, like you said, the need, expose it, illuminate it, make it larger so that they know and see the problem, and then give them a really easy solution that costs money. It's like, this is the solution. I do it for this much. And then this is taken off your plate. You don't have to worry about it anymore. The transformation is what you always sell.
Yeah. My brain just went to discounts and how that works. But I think that's a different topic.
It is. I don't actually recommend discounts, and we could make that we could do a whole entire episode just on pricing strategies and thoughts around that too, by the way. I think that
Yeah.
it may
Because,
not be a long episode, but I think we could talk about it for like a good 30
oh,
minutes,
I
40
have.
minutes.
I have quite the journey that I've been on pricing our visual services. Yeah.
Well,
But
maybe we can do that next time as another episode. We'll just do a whole thing around like how to price products based on all the different products we've actually interacted with too, because I think some people would find that interesting.
yeah, I mean, especially as far as like a service or a product, like, that's handmade or small business, like the pricing in that is different from.
Yeah, and I have some good philosophies on how to price something. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine you've been in sales for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was really cool. I really liked hearing what you had to say and just kind of, because I didn't know. I didn't know what you were going to go on about.
I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to go into, but I had some ideas that I'd written down that I think we wove in together into the conversation as principles of communication. And so, I mean, if we wanted to review some of the more important takeaways, what are some of the things that resonated with you on your side?
The thing that really resonated with me was probably in the very beginning, just about listening. I think that's a really important skill that not a lot of people really think about. They don't think about listening. They think about like where like you said, where is my attention? Where do I want to put my attention right now? What's more interesting? Rather than thinking about where is the interesting in this person that's right in front of me?
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody's fascinating. It blows my mind sometimes when I think about everybody has a life just as rich and deep, if not more, than mine. And I have been around in this body my entire life. I know a lot of stuff about my life. A lot of shit has happened in my life. But other people have also had that. And I'd love to learn about it, whatever they're willing to share. What about you?
I think storytelling was a really big thing, and teaching through storytelling, because it captivates, and having a solid, point to your stories so that it resonates and gets memorable for people, I think is a big thing. So transformational stories is part of listening, is what we talked about there. The idea of like elucidating transformational moments in people's lives and then having them tell that story is part of it. Being committed to values, not outcomes, was another one I think is that was something I wrote down that I'm like, I definitely want to talk about that. I just don't know where. But
You're welcome.
the ability to, ground it in your example of what we were talking about with work, I think was really, really useful. And I will say hard one in terms of how to learn that from my job. So
I haven't had my regular weekly therapy sessions for a while now, and I'm not talking about our podcast, actual therapy. And I don't like treating a podcast like a therapy session, but I knew that it would come up today just because I haven't had my therapy sessions in a while, and because we're talking about communication, and it is on my mind a lot these days of how do I communicate with people at work that are getting under my skin.
mhm.
So it's funny. I thought you also might have something that would tie in. I was like, Chris will have some wisdom. I know he will. He's worked with a lot of people over the years.
Yeah, definitely. I've screwed up a lot of times to make these insights, but I also won a lot of times by, but and created some solid impact with people.
You won. Can you just say what you mean by won? Like you won the argument?
No, I just won with people, as in like made an impact positively.
Hmm.
They had lasting change in a positive way. They achieved something they didn't think that was possible, or they grew in some way out of a conversation or an area that we worked on. I've done a lot of coaching, is what I basically say. And when I say win, it's from a perspective of coaching someone into a result or a desired outcome. That's why I often think like therapy is different than coaching. I think therapy has its place and can be very, very useful in terms of creating an understanding of self and a reflection of self. I think a lot of people need coaching though. And because understanding self and figuring out what are the problems is part of it. But then coaching is where we really get outside of self and get onto a purpose where those things that we used to be no longer hold us to who we're going to be. And coaching is how we kind of, I think, move from the therapeutic mind into the into healthy mind in my mind. And it means we're, making progress. There are versions of therapy like solution focused brief therapy, which is basically coaching, with where you ask really intentional, powerful questions to move people towards certain outcomes. And it's very practical philosophy. I think stoicism is another area where it's like practical philosophy for your life. It's similar, but like I just put it under the conglomerate of coaching. And many people don't just need therapy. In fact, most people don't need a lot of therapy. They just need a little coaching to get some things out of their life. I'll give you an example. Like I've met some people who say like, "Oh, I'm depressed," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm doing therapy because for my depression." And I'm like, "Oh, why are you depressed?" And then they go into a whole thing about what their life is like, and I'm like, "Well, that's a reasonable response to how your life is. Your life sucks. You're depressed. That's why. Why does your therapist get you on doing anything to change those circumstances in your life? Because if you have no partner, you have very few friends, you're isolated, you don't really like your job, and you're not doing anything to better yourself, I'd be feeling pretty freaking depressed too. But that's not my life because I did things that weren't that to get out of that. Right. And so a lot of people, I think, might need coaching to get out of whatever they're doing and move to a place where there's actual solutions. Anyway, I'm not talking about you, but I've seen this before with
Yeah.
people. And
Yeah.
so in my old life, I would often talk to people who are like doing therapy. And I'm like, well, let's talk about how we can coach you out of some of these things that are actually causing you to pay for a therapist right now. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely value there. I mean, even when we spoke with Satine Phoenix, she helped to kind of highlight that difference of a coach versus a therapist. That the value of having someone look at your life objectively. It's kind of like that friend you would go to for relationship advice. Be like, God, I really want him to like me. Like, how do I do this? I keep doing this and that and this and that. And they're like, you really keep fucking this up. Like, you can't think clearly. Like, here's what you got to do. Boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. Oftentimes it's amazing how like if you change things in your life, then your life starts to change, right? Like you change yourself and life
Yeah.
changes. And so
What was that
sometimes,
moment for you, Chris, when that change happened?
there's been a lot of moments in my life, but when I've anytime something has changed, I can give you an example. Um, there was a moment where I was with my coach and there was a disdain for my lack of athleticism and desire to be fit. And the what I was eating in terms of what my week to week eating habits and stuff were. And then for me, looking at myself in the mirror, not liking what I was seeing. Now I could have gone to a therapy person and they might have told me, well, you might just need to accept yourself more.
Yeah,
And
where
you
does
need
that
to
come from?
where does that come from? Why don't you love yourself just as you are? And reality was I was a fat fuck who was not doing well and I needed to do something about that. And my coach, in his wisdom, gave me some hard love and showed me the disdain he had for that level of thinking. And then I made some commitments. I changed who I was. Who I became was a person who no longer drank mochas 5 to 7 times a week, loaded with sugar every morning with fat and all this sort of stuff. It was the first thing I put in my body. And I used to do it for years. So I gave it up. I said, I'm not doing that. I was eating 1 to 3 Delissio pizzas in a week because I was lazy and I didn't want to cook. And I thought Delissio pizzas were delicious. And I think, I can handle it. But I was eating way more than I thought I was because it was easy. And I stopped. I said, no more Delissio pizzas, no more mochas. And then I just made a commitment to be a healthy person, which meant being active. And instead of like, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, it was, no, I'm a healthy person. So for the rest of my life, I'm going to be pursuing activity, whether that's gymming or disc golfing or running or anything else like that. When I changed and shifted who I was to being a healthy person, and it wasn't this like temporary goal I was going to do for a year or 6 months or like 5 times a week, it then I surrendered to that goal because it was a new person that I was going to be. And I mourned the loss of who I was, but I gave them up. And that's how you make long lasting, tangible change, which is the moment that I changed.
Nice. Yeah. It's powerful having a coach, I guess. My therapist does a pretty good job of giving me perspective, but I'd say actually people we interview have been great coaches for me, indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like going to them for one-on-one coaching, but boy, they give some great. Well, I mean, I get to ask them the questions I want to ask in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And there's the ability for them to give you answers that you may like or not like about what they did. And it's like, oh, well, that's why they're successful. They did all that shit I didn't do.
Yeah. It's that humble pie sometimes.
Right? I mean, success leaves clues. That's why we interview people.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that when we dig in, we're going to find those clues. And if you're listening, we're going to find them for you. So, and if you want to get coaching, talk to us. I do coaching on the side. So reach out and we can talk about coaching you up if you feel like coaching might be beneficial for you over just say therapy.
Yeah. And if you want to reach out to us and just chat and something in here resonated with you and you want to talk more about it, you can always reach out to us on social media.
Yeah. Frank is the therapist. I'm the coach. He'll listen
It's
to your.
so true.
It is, right?
So true.
If you need therapy, no, okay, we can't say it that way. But if
Yeah,
you're looking for something,
I'm not certified by any means, but I have been through enough therapy in my own life to know how to do it.
But between the two of us, you would be the therapist and I would be the person the coaching them out of whatever it is. So anyway, I'm sure between the two of us, we could figure out how to get you where you want to go.
Yeah.
So, let's put it that way.
That's actually an idea if people do want that help.
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously that's what we're doing here with the community. I mean,
one on two.
Yeah, or 1 on 2, but or just I've done that kind of thing on the side, and it's great. I mean, I've done it for free with a lot of my friends, just because a lot of times they just need a little coaching. But also, if somebody is willing to pay for it or has a budget, maybe we can do some free stuff with people just to get a few testimonials. So if you're looking for that, I'd be down to. I mean, I'll tell you, people reach out to me on Nerdpreneur Instagram and ask me questions. I love that because then I wind up, here's some ideas like this. And I've had ongoing back and forth with people about their business and them, because it's usually the business is a reflection of you. So if there's a problem with the business, I might have to hold the mirror up to nature, and show you who is the person that's creating the business might have to change a little bit in order for the business to get going. And that can be tough conversation for people. That's why I like to have people pay for it a little bit. Is just like, you have some skin in the game. So there's some commitment.
They get committed.
Well, you got to be committed, because if you're just interested, it's not really worth being coached. But if you're committed to change, then, put some money and skin in the game. It's actually possible to change pretty quickly with a coach who's going to help you be accountable, but also really keep you in an inspired state, keep you seeing the person you want to be, keep you reevaluating tactics that work for you. Because sometimes it's not about, this works or doesn't work. It's just the effectiveness of your strategies, and those strategies can be shifted.
Yeah, effectiveness, efficiencies. Yeah.
So check out the show notes, and we'll put a couple links down there if people want to find out more.
Yeah, and as always, Chris,
keep it nerdy.